Today we're making the perfect tank pattern. I love this pattern because it is fast and easy, but it's also great to customize. You can make it look however you want. I am using a stretchy cotton knit fabric for this tank today. And before you start cutting, it's important to lay out the front and back pieces on the fold of the fabric. A little trick I learned for the neckband and the armbands is to lay them out on the bias of the fabric. So normally you would lay it flat across the grain and cut it, but if you cut it on the bias, it typically helps them to lay down more flat in the end. And that's important when it comes to things with a neckband, like a t-shirt or a tank top. So you're putting these bands at a 45-degree angle to the selvage edge of the fabric and cutting them out like that. When you're all done cutting, you can iron your pieces and then lay out the back bodice piece so that it's facing up, facing you, and then place the front bodice piece on top of it so that right sides are touching. Everything should be lined up, and then you're going to serge or sew the shoulder seams. I am using a serger for my project, but if you don't have one, you can use a sewing machine. Just use a stretch stitch like a zigzag stitch. Now that the shoulders are complete, we're going to sew down the sides of the tank top. So your tank top is still right sides together, wrong sides facing out, and you're going to serge the side seams together. Now flip your tank right side out and iron it. It's time to create the neckband. So take that piece and fold it in half so that wrong sides are together, and then you're going to sew or serge along the short edge. Now you have a band. Open it up and fold it in half again, this time widthwise and with wrong sides touching. We are going to quarter the neckband to make it easier to place on the tank top. So find the seam and place a pin there, and then with your neckband fold it in half, find the edge opposite that seam and place a pin there. Open your band up so that the two pins are touching, and then place a pin at both of the new edges. Your tank should be right side out, and fold it in half so that the back piece is on top. Use that back middle crease and line it up right with the seam on the neckband. The neckband is upside down, and pin it to where the raw edges of the neckband match the raw edges of the tank top neck opening. Pin the front middle of the band to the front middle of the tank top. To place the side pins, stretch the neckband so that it matches in length to the neck opening, and right where it touches, place the pins there. The neckband is slightly smaller than the neck opening, and that's so that when the project is all done, it lays flat. But if at this point you find that the neckband is too short, that it's not quite stretching all the way around the neck opening, it could be that your fabric is just not quite as stretchy. So in order to remedy this, you can recut the neckband and add a little bit of length to it. Try adding 1/2 inch. When you are done, it will look like this. All of the raw edges line up together and you are ready to sew it in place. To sew the neckband on, start at the back seam. Do a few stitches to anchor it in place and then begin to stretch the neckband to meet the edge of the neck opening. The pins will tell you how much you need to stretch. Sew from pin to pin, stopping at each one and then readjusting your neckband so that all of the edges match up. When you finish sewing all the way around, you can flip your neckband back, down and side, and iron it in place. Now we'll add the armbands, and these will be very similar to the neckband. So start by folding one in half, right sides together, sew across the short end, then open it up and place the wrong sides together to make it into the band. Quarter the band starting with the seam and using that as a guide to find the 4 edges. When you're done, it will look like this. With the tank right side out, find the armpit edge and use the base of the armpit edge where that seam is to match up with the seam on the armband. Start there to pin it in place. Then pin the top of the armband to the shoulder seam and stretch out the sides to find where the side pin should go. Again, this band is just slightly smaller than your armpit opening, so some readjusting may be necessary. When it's all pinned in place, it will look like this. Go ahead and serge or sew it on, stretching in between each pin. Flip the seam down, iron it in place, and then repeat for the other side. Now on to the final step, which is hemming the tank top. Turn it inside out and then measure 3/4 from the bottom and flip up that bottom edge. Iron and pin it in place before you sew it down. I'm using a cover stitch machine for my hem, but you can definitely use any kind of stretch stitch on a regular sewing machine. A zigzag or a twin needle or a good old stretch stitch will work great for this. Go all the way around the bottom edge and then your tank top is done. This tank top goes with just about anything, but we think it looks especially good with our flutter bloomers.